Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. But you're just in time to actually get back into this conversation about pandemic brain, what we can actually do to get rid of pandemic brain, and why a lot of us are in fact feeling or we're struggling with pandemic brain because it's something that all of us have in fact been going through, right? Now, like I said, pandemic brain it's not just for a certain set of people, but also new research has found that because of how much of time we've spent in isolation, because of how much of time we've spent, because of how much of time we've spent away from our families, spent, doing different things in the sense that we didn't do things we normally would do, right? I mean, normally you wouldn't stay at home, but we had to stay at home because we didn't have any other option, and because of those changes that we had to make, because of the fact that we actually had to adjust to these new things, it meant that a lot of us had to make a lot of changes. So that's what we'll be talking about right here on Relax Radio with me, your girl Sarah, right here on the Sunrise. Now, I'll be keeping you company all the way until 9 a.m. on the 2nd of July. And it is, in fact, a Friday. So, very excited about it because that means it's a weekend next, right? Also, very quick reminder that you can follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And that way you can stay connected to us. You can always be updated on everything we're talking about and also always be informed. Now, make sure you download our app, which is available on both the iOS and the Android devices. And also the Apple Play Store and the Google Play Store as well. So you can listen to us from any part of the world, anywhere in the world. And you can always be a part of this conversation. But let's actually get back into this conversation about the pandemic brain. So Mike Yasa actually tells us it's going to take some time for us to recover from it. Now, he's actually the director of the UC Irvine Center for Neurobiology and also for learning and memory, and the UCI Brain Initiative, right? So this is what he's saying. He's saying that, obviously we will get over it, but it's actually going to take us some time to get over it. And that's only normal, right? Like I said, even though our brain is adaptive, even though our brain actually evolves and adapts to things fast, it obviously takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight because the pandemic didn't happen overnight, right? The exacerbation of the pandemic, everything we're facing, all the lockdowns we're going through, all of those things, those decisions were months and months of discussion, negotiations, and then finally implementing all of it, right? So obviously it's going to take some time. Now, what he refers to as it is actually the pandemic brain, right? Which is basically the subtle but frustrating mental deterioration that many of us have actually felt over the course of this pandemic, and actually as a phenomenon has come to be known right now, the pandemic brain. Okay, so that is of course what he's referring to. Now, obviously, it's very common knowledge, and we've discussed about this right here on the Sunrise as well. It is, in fact, common knowledge that stress can actually be hazardous to our physical health. And especially when experienced over a protracted period of time, it's much, much more scarier and even riskier for all of us, right? Now, sometime back we were talking about burnout, we were talking about overworking and all the exhaustion that you have to face when you overwork a lot. So we were talking about all of that, and we understood that one of the reasons of working so much, or the fact that you are always stressed out actually led to a lot of health risks in the future, but also in the present as well right now, because the World Health Organization has actually said that if you work for more than 55 hours a week, then that means you have an increased risk of heart diseases and respiratory diseases as well. So obviously that's something that needs to be kept in mind. But going back to this, we all know that if you're too stressed out, or if your stress has been if you've been experiencing stress for a prolonged period of time, then that means that it is in fact very, very risky, and it's very, very unhealthy for you. Now, prolonged exposure to cortisol, which is basically the body's primary stress hormone, actually increases the risk of heart disease, sleep disruptions, and even mood disorders like anxiety and depression. Now, that's actually why a lot of people who are stressed out, that is why a lot of people who are going through, burnout, who are actually feeling a lot of the effects of exhaustion, have a lot of mental mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. Because of how our cortisol levels change, it actually affects the way our mood affects our mood as well. So that's obviously why a lot of these people end up with diseases like anxiety and depression, and even sometimes suicide as well. Right now, when it comes to the pandemic brain, when it comes to stress, or rather stress actually, your cognition actually suffers too. Now, chronic stress has actually been found to kill brain cells and even shrink the size of your prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex is basically the part of your brain that's responsible for your memory, your focus, and learning. Now, that actually explains why we can't focus. That explains why we constantly forget things and why we're so distracted, because because we've been going through so much of stress, because we haven't been able to sleep properly. We've all been very, very stressed out ever since the pandemic began, because, like I said, there are so many things in the unknown about the pandemic, right? Things like, when is it going to end? Will we be able to completely get rid of it? Will these things, will COVID-19 be coming back like a seasonal flu? So because we have all of these questions, it's only, it only makes sense that our prefrontal cortex, suffers because of the fact that we've had to go through so much of stress the past few months, right? Now, like I said, in the weeks and the months after the initial lockdown, people actually began to notice a sudden inability to focus, and they couldn't remember things, they couldn't follow through on tasks, they were always distracted, and they couldn't pay attention for long periods of time. And we were all like worried about what was happening to us, right? Because look, it's just so weird when you're someone. Okay, for example, if you take me, I'm someone who can focus. Like I swear, even if the world was burning, and the end of the world was happening, I would still be able to focus on what I am doing. Like that's just how focused I am. But then the pandemic happened, and I couldn't focus at all. And I was freaking out about it, because I was like, oh my gosh, am I not smart enough anymore? Why can't I study? Why can't I remember anything I study as well? And that's actually because of pandemic brain, and it's not something wrong with me, it's actually something that was caused because of the pandemic, right? So like I said, we when this first happened, everyone was just really scared. They were having so many questions and doubts and all of that. But there were so many headlines out there, even memes, where these headlines basically said, it's not just you, we're going through it as well. It's something that researchers have found to be happening, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And we also saw the smooth brain memes that were all over the internet, right? So obviously, because of that, um a lot of these newspapers, even memes, and all over social media, it actually helped us sort of maybe normalize it, because it is in fact normal right now, right? Like literally everyone has symptoms of pandemic brain as well. But more recently, a high profile article in the Atlantic actually investigated the late pandemic fog, or fog of forgetting, and it suggested there are circumstantial memory holes were an adaptive response to the endless unknown. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, right? Like I said, this is how our brains adapt. The fact that we don't remember things for a while, or the fact that we forget things and we can't focus, is actually an adaptive response by our brains for the fact that we have this endless unknown in front of us, right? The fact that there are so many things out there that we don't know about. Like I said, when it comes to this pandemic, we've only been in this pandemic for 1.5 years, which means there's still a lot of things we don't know about. And like I said, even though we're conducting research, be it about vaccines, be it about whether this flu will return again, whether we need additional vaccine boosters to actually prevent ourselves from getting the disease, or even to build up our immunity, and even to increase the amount of antibodies in our body. Obviously there is still a lot of research that's being conducted. There's still so many things out there that we don't know about, and obviously it's very scary, because we don't know about any of it. And because of that, that's why our brain is responding to it this way. But what's important, or what you keep in mind, is the fact that it's not something that you can't change. It's definitely something you can change, and there's definitely nothing for you to worry about, because things will get back to normal, but it's just going to take some time. right? Now we need to understand that when it comes to the pandemic, it hasn't just been one stressful event, right? It's actually been a collection of simultaneous stresses, and some of them have been very, very life threatening as well. And this has been compounded by the disruptions in our physical activity, our daily rhythms and routines, and it has also stretched out over many, many months. So a lot of these stresses that we had to go through because of the pandemic, it wasn't just one thing, and it wasn't just like a seasonal thing as well. Like it didn't exist for a few days and then disappear. In fact, it was prolonged, and it was stretched out for many months of the year. And look, come on, we're still going through that, right? The fact that our routines have changed, that there are disruptions in the way we normally function. Our daily rhythms have changed. We can't go out and exercise like we used to. So obviously, because of that, there has been a lot of changes that have been stretched out over a specific time period. And because of that, it is in fact, exacerbating this, because we're still stressed out. It's very easy to say, oh, like I'm stressed out, but the truth is, we're actually all very, very stressed out. Now, Michael Yasa actually thinks we're finally on the trajectory to recovery, but it won't happen instantaneously. And like I said, we didn't get here overnight. So obviously, we will take time to recover. Now, researchers actually have begun to get a sense actually of the way our brains have been altered by 18 months of social distancing and uncertainty. And physically, in the case of some people who received treatment for serious COVID infections and showed reduced gray matter as well, right? So this is what I said when I meant that, sometimes the composition of our brains change as well to adapt to everything. So, this is when it comes to the way our brains have been altered, and I mean like quite literally as well. It has been physically altered as well. Obviously, it has been mentally altered as well because of how stressed out we have been, but physically a lot of changes has happened as well. Now, for actually, Barbara Sahakian, who's actually a professor of clinical neuropsychology at the University of Cambridge, has actually been working on this working rather on this project. It's basically an assessment of the effects of social isolation and loneliness on people's brains during the pandemic. Now, I know that's something you and I both went through. We were really lonely during the pandemic because, like I said, humans are social beings. You can't always be stuck in one place. You can't always stay inside a certain place for a really long time. So obviously, when it comes to things like that, we've had to deal with a lot of isolation. We've had to deal with a lot of loneliness. And because of that, it's been very, very hard for us to actually come to terms with it. So this assessment is actually about the effects of social isolation and how loneliness has had an effect on people's brains during the pandemic. Now, make sure you stay tuned because I'll actually be back here in a few minutes to talk about all the changes that have happened in your brain and what things you can actually do to make sure that you can go back to fully being able to concentrate properly again. Okay, I know that's a huge dilemma for a lot of us, but don't worry because I'll be here to actually make sure to help you out with it.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. You buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good thing.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. Now you're tuned into the sunrise, and I'm very, very excited. And also, I have a lot of fun things coming your way. So I'm very excited to be here because we have a lot of things to talk about, actually. So make sure you stay tuned because we will be getting into conversations that are very important, especially in the middle of a pandemic. We will be getting into all of those conversations. So make sure you stay tuned, okay? But actually, before I head into this conversation about pandemic brain, I want to quickly remind you that you can follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. When you follow us on our socials, you can always be updated. You can be the first to know about everything that's going on, and that's something to be happy about. That's something to be proud of. Okay, so make sure you do that. But also, while you're at it, make sure you actually go download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and with the Google Play Store. So make sure you do that because, like I said, that way you can be a part of this conversation anytime you want. And you can also text me on 07852473473 so you can be a part of this conversation. And that way I can actually hear your opinion. I can hear your thoughts. And that's something I would absolutely love, right? Because right here at Relax Radio, it's about you. It's about your thoughts. It's about your perspectives and it's about what you want. So make sure you do that, okay? But let's actually get back into this conversation about the pandemic brain because that is very, very important as well. Right now, like I said, there was this research being conducted to assess the effects of social isolation and loneliness on people's brains during the pandemic. Now, Barbara Sahakian actually says that the impacts, which are assessed across multiple regions of the brain, are in fact profound. And she says that they've seen changes in the volume in the brain's temporal, frontal, occipital, and subcortical regions, and even the amygdala and the hippocampus in people who have been socially isolated. Right? I'm not actually going to get into any technicality about it because, to put it simply, we have so many different parts in our bodies, and also like there are different names for it, and sometimes they're very complicated as well. But basically what she means, to put it quite simply, is the fact that our entire brain has actually gone through a huge number of changes because of social isolation and because of the pandemic. So something that they have actually found out is that volume loss in any or all of these areas could be seriously detrimental to the processes we rely on to engage with others and the world around us, right? So obviously that is something that we really need to understand, right? The fact of the matter is, like I said, a lot of this research that is being conducted actually has shown that when it comes to the matter in our brains, when it comes to some of the matter in different parts of our brains, it has in fact reduced, right? And the fact of the matter is that volume loss can actually lead to a huge amount of detrimental effects to everyone who are going through pandemic brain. It's also it's worth remembering rather that different people have had vastly different pandemic experiences, right? You can't obviously expect all the people to have similar symptoms because our experiences of COVID-19 has been different from everyone else's. For example, the COVID-19 experience of someone in the UK versus the COVID-19 experience of someone in an Asian country, somewhere like India, is completely different, right? Obviously, because when it comes to resources, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the way the crisis was handled, and all of these other different things, it's very, very different, right? So, like I said, it's very, very different, and it's important to remember that in no case are you going to get similar experiences of people, right? I mean, yeah, sure, some parts of it might be similar, but that doesn't mean that the whole experience is in fact similar, right? But let's actually look at it in this perspective as well. For someone who is single, who doesn't have children, or who is in a relationship but don't have children, um they might actually have a healthy road to regain that cognitive recovery, right? And they might even have something that's much, much smoother compared to all the frontline compared to a frontline medical worker with a post-traumatic stress symptoms, or even a single parent with young children, right? Obviously. So when it comes to our experiences of the pandemic brain, when it comes to our experiences of COVID as well, we all have vastly different experiences of it. Now, even though we have vastly different experiences, some in most of these cases there are similarities, right? Now, like I said, it's basically like you take COVID-19, right? You have a bunch of common symptoms, like fever, a cough, and a cold, and you have common symptoms like that. But there are also certain symptoms that only some people get, like your loss of sense and loss of taste and smell rather, and sometimes being feeling very fatigued, or even joint pain. Those symptoms are only symptoms that some people will have, right? So obviously there will be, or there might be actually commonalities among these experiences. Now, Sahakian has actually examined categories of people, and these are different categories of people, right? They range from medical workers to those who never had COVID but were in lockdown, children, kids, or, just kids, but also, elders, different groups of people. Because obviously, when you're doing research on something like this, it's very important that you look at different groups, because different groups experience the pandemic in different ways. And obviously you need all that data to actually come to a conclusion. You need all that data to actually make a decision about whatever is happening, especially about the pandemic brain. Now, many people, reported difficulty with concentration and memory. And believe me, I'm also in that lot, because honestly, I've had so much of difficulty concentrating. I've had so much of difficulty when it came to memory as well. Because look, I'm like the least forgetful person on this planet, and I'm not even boasting, because I remember literally everything. You ask me something that happened like 10 years ago, I would still remember that. Okay. um and I have such a good memory, but like ever since the pandemic began, I keep forgetting things, and I'm just like, what is happening to me? Why am I forgetting things? Am I dying? Like, is that what it is? Because that's what it felt like. And a lot of people have actually reported this as well, where they've had this difficulty when it came to concentration and memory. Now, a lot of other people also reported symptoms of depression, right? Which is, it's a lot of it's a lot of symptoms. Everyone has been going through different symptoms, and a lot of us have actually been feeling depressed as well. But it's important to remember that people who already had, these pre-existing mental health conditions before the pandemic, pre-COVID-19, those situations, this situation has in fact exacerbated their mental health illnesses. Because, unlike some of us who didn't have any mental illnesses before the pandemic, they've had to go through it much worse, right? Because they already have this. That means, whatever effects we're feeling, they're feeling it much more intensely. So obviously, because of that, they've had to face these changes. They've had to recover differently. They've had to sort of deal with it differently as well. And it has in fact been very frustrating. It has in fact been very scary for them as well. So when it comes to recovering from the pandemic brain, when it comes to focusing on the pandemic and focusing on getting our concentration back, that is something that we need to keep in mind as well. Obviously, like I said, people's COVID-19 experiences have been different. People have had to do different things to get over the pandemic. Not necessarily get over the pandemic, but move on from the pandemic, move on from the fact that maybe our lives might not necessarily return back to normal, that we might even have to keep living this life for a time period, because we don't really know what is going to happen. So obviously, when it comes to instances like that, there is in fact a lot of differences. There is in fact a lot of changes that have had to be made as well. So like I said, what's important to keep in mind is the fact that you can actually change these things. You can get better, you can focus better. All you got to do is just focus on yourselves. You just got to focus on the fact that you can make that change. You got to focus on the fact that that things will eventually get better, but it's just going to take a bit more time, because we're still conducting research. We're still trying to assess the effects of the pandemic. So obviously it's going to take some time, but that doesn't mean it's never going to happen. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It's already happening. Just takes a bit of time. But let's actually talk about what we can actually do to help with concentration and to get rid of the pandemic brain. Now, the first thing you can actually do is sweat it out. And it's actually quite easier said than done, because during the pandemic we've all lost our sense of physical fitness. I am guilty of that. I have become absolutely lazy. My favorite thing to do right now is just to lie in bed and sleep all day. But I understand why I am like that, because my life has been so busy. It was so busy during the pandemic. So obviously, when I got a break, when I got what seemed like a break, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm actually going to go home and sleep and lay in bed all day and be lazy. But of course I can't do that, because my mom, she's always like, oh, like, help around the house, don't always sleep, don't be lazy, do something productive with your life. And I'm like, but I just want a small break. But I know we can all relate to that. It's almost as if our parents have something against us just staying in bed. Like, I think they do, because it's just the moment they see us in bed, they just get so angry. And like, I'm like, okay, calm down, I'm just taking 5 minutes, okay, mom, like, but I think this is just all parents in general. But getting back to sweating it out, getting back to physical activity, we've all been very lazy. It's been very hard to adjust to the pandemic, and because we've been stuck at home and we've been depressed. Come on, when you're depressed and stressed out, do you feel like working out? I mean, you don't even feel good about yourself. So obviously, all you want to do is just lie in bed all day, and that in no way means that you want to exercise, right? But it's very, very important that you begin to exercise, because if you want to focus better, if you want to focus on your concentration, if you want to make sure that you get your concentration back, that you can be the way you were, if you want to be as productive as you used to be before the pandemic, well, the way to start it is actually by by working out, because we all are very guilty, and we all guiltily know that we should be moving more, and that we should actually be reaping in the sweet endorphin rewards of our activity. But obviously that's not what we're doing now. There's actually a lot of evidence as well, that shows that physical activity in fact improves our cognitive functioning. So make sure you exercise starting from now. I know, you know what, I'm finding it very hard to do it myself, but what's important is that we don't give up. We make this decision, we make this effort, and we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm going to work out. I am somehow going to do this, okay? But make sure you stay tuned, because I will be back to actually talk to you about things that you can do. I will be back to tell you about what else you can do, so make sure you stay tuned. But right now I'm actually going to head into a small break, but I will be back definitely to talk about the things you should be doing.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Or you didn't do very well, and they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, I'd say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter. Yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it," and that was it. So I'd dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. They'd have to me. Why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on Relaks Radio. Now, I want to quickly get into this conversation because it's interesting, and we're finally at the part where we talk about what we can actually do to get rid of the pandemic brain. Now, like I was telling you earlier, physical activity, it's something that that is something that we all wanted to do, but we didn't really do anything, because I can't tell you how many times I tried to do different workouts, but I eventually failed at all of it because I just didn't have enough determination, and I was just not motivated enough to actually get into physical activity and do it, because I was so lazy and all I wanted to do was just stay in bed. Like, that's literally all I wanted to do. So obviously, it's very, very important that we get back into moving, and we get back into physical activity and everything, because it actually helps us with our cognitive functioning. And especially because a lot of us are going through different issues when it comes to concentrating, when it comes to focusing, when it comes to our ability to remember things. We need to definitely make sure we get back into exercising to actually make sure that we can focus on things, and that we can make sure that we will get back our ability to focus. Right now, another thing is that exercising actually increases neuroplasticity, which is basically the brain's adaptability to experience and change. Now, like I said, our brains are very adaptive, but for our brains to be very adaptive, for our brains to constantly, have the ability to change, to make those differences that need to be made, especially in situations like a pandemic, we need to keep exercising, because when we exercise, when we have a lot of physical activity, when we're physically fit, is when our neuroplasticity in our brains will actually increase, right? So make sure you exercise. I know it's hard and I know it's tough, but you really, really should exercise, okay? And I know it's easier said than done, but today I will definitely try to go home. I mean, when I go home, I will definitely try to exercise, you don't have to start really big, because obviously I can't. I mean, it's not like I can go home and do 50 burpees and like 20 or 75 Russian twists and whatnot. Anyway, I hate exercising, but the thing is, make sure you try to start small, because obviously it's very hard to start a labor intensive workout right at the beginning. Especially if your body has been used your body has been used for months of, or it has been used to 2 months of inactivity, because we've all been lazing around. Well, don't start huge, because it's definitely going to it's not that healthy, and it's also going to result in you having a lot of body aches and a lot of body pains. So make sure you start small. Start with a few squats, start with a few stretches, crunches, whatnot, and then make it develop it day by day. Make sure you grow day by day, and you keep adding on, and you keep exerting, or you you get engaged in more physical activity. Okay, so make sure you do that. Now, something else that we can do is actually something called the sweet sound of recovery, which is basically something very simple. Just listen to music, right? I know, did you think that the answer to increasing your focus was listening to music? Because I didn't think that. I just found out about it, and I was thinking, oh, this is very cool. Because to be honest, in the middle of the pandemic, I have been listening to a lot of music. I have found a lot of new artists as well, and I have to say, I absolutely love Spotify. So I spend a lot of time listening to music as well. So why you should actually listen to music is music increases your oxytocin production, which generally contributes to feelings of empathy and goodwill. Now, if you followed our social media platforms, which is basically Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, make sure you do. But if you are already following us, you would have you would know that yesterday, rather, we actually posted this TikTok on the happiness chemicals and how to hack them, right? So you can use that you can use that for your life as well. Find out what makes what find out what helps you hack these happiness chemicals, and that way you can actually make sure that you use it to make yourself more happier. We spoke about the different types of hormones and chemicals as well, like oxytocin, dopamine, endorphin, and we spoke about different things. So make sure you go check that out, because it's definitely going to help you in the middle of a pandemic, because we're all feeling so low, we're all feeling so sluggish, we're feeling like we're useless. So that's definitely going to help all of us, right? So make sure you go check it out. But also, before I get into the conversation, just want to quickly remind you that you can text me on 07852473473. I'm going to say that again, 0852473 and you can be a part of this conversation. You can contribute to this conversation through your experiences, your feelings, whatever it is. Just make sure you text me, because I would absolutely love to know about it, okay? So make sure you do that. And also, very very quick reminder that you can follow us on all our social or rather, you can download our apps, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, and that way you can be a part of this conversation any time of the day, anywhere in the world, which is honestly the best. So make sure you do that. Okay, but getting back into music now, like I said, it has been shown to increase your oxytocin production, and that has helped in increasing your feelings of empathy and goodwill. Now, music has also been shown to lower your cortisol levels in the body. And, whether you're making music, especially making music, regardless of whether you're singing or you're playing a musical instrument, that is even better, because both have been linked to improved cognitive resilience later in life. So, if you're a budding musician, or even if you're just you don't even have to be a budding musician. You can be someone who plays instruments really badly, like I do. But that definitely helps you in increasing your cognitive resilience later on in life, and it helps you in focusing better as well. And you know what, the best is that these things that you need to do to make sure you get your concentration back is not even like it's not something hard. It's things you normally do on a day-to-day basis. Like, no one's going to complain about the fact that no one's going to complain about the fact that you have to listen to music, right? Because come on, we all love listening to music. It's not like we're ever going to complain about that. I mean, sure, when it comes to exercising, yeah, definitely I would also complain about it. But the thing is, if you start small and if you're consistent, then you'll eventually get used to it, so you won't be complaining about it. And last is something that a lot of us have a hard time doing. It's basically freeing your head. Okay, now I know this is very hard because a lot of us have different things going on in the back of our head. We have these negative thoughts, we have doubts, we have uncertainties, and we have a lot of things going on in our head. But mood and cognitive function actually go hand in hand. So mindfulness and meditation have been linked to improvements on both fronts, where you can basically ease your stress and it can enhance your automatic cognition processes like memory retrieval. So the more you meditate, the more you're mindful, and the more you try to do these activities that will actually help you with your mood, it will in fact help you free your head as well. So exercises like focusing your attention during meditation, or even conscious breathing redirected actually a person's attention to a single object or sensation, will actually in fact help you a lot to focus, will help you a lot to free your head. And this is something that you should definitely try out. Okay, now make sure you stay tuned, because even though this is the end of our discussion, right? Even though this is the end of our discussion, I will actually be back in a few more minutes to talk to you about homelessness and rough sleeping when it comes to women, which is a huge problem here in the UK, because the percentage, the statistics have risen for the past 5 years, and that is obviously something that we need to be discussing as well, right? So make sure you stay tuned, because I will be back in a few more minutes to talk to you about homelessness and rough sleeping in for women rather.